Dr. Maria Montessori was born in Chiaravalle, Italy on August 31st, 1870. The only daughter of Alessandro and Renilda Montessori, her father was a descendant of a noble family and had become a successful financier for the Italian government. Her mother, Renilda, also of noble birth, was a highly educated woman of her time. Renilda would become one of Maria's earliest and most ardent supporters. Maria's family moved to Rome when she was still a young girl. At 14, she enrolled in a technical school for boys because she wanted to become an engineer. She went on to high school, where she specialized in physics and mathematics. When she completed her course of studies, she changed her mind about becoming an engineer. Now she wanted to pursue a medical degree and become a doctor. But because she had focused on science, she lacked some necessary credentials to begin a medical course. She had to complete Latin and Greek and pass examinations to enter medical school, something unheard of for women at that time. Maria graduated a Doctor of Medicine in 1886 at just 26 years old. She was known for her sense of humor, exquisite fashion taste, and enduring kindness. We must note the times in which Maria lived. Italy was a nation in transition, a newly united country still suffering from effects of war and civil unrest. Politics of that time were restless and unstable, poverty and illiteracy rampant. The Industrial Revolution had brought about harsh working conditions that were crushing to family life. Child labor was common practice, and many people were immigrating to the United States in search of a better life. La Dottoressa, as she was called, was passionately interested in alleviating the conditions of the poor, especially of women and children. Well known in professional circles for her outspokenness on child labor and rights for women, she accepted a position as an assistant doctor in a psychiatric hospital in Rome, where physically and mentally handicapped children were kept, along with the mentally ill. While her official role was to monitor the health of children, her interest in children's growth and development began in earnest. She recalled that children were herded together in a bare room like prisoners. "Look at them," the matron had said in disgust. "They throw themselves on the floor in search of crumbs, and with shrill and incoherent cries they stretch their hands for bread which they kneaded into different shapes." Maria's insight at that moment had come to her in a flash. These children did not crave food so much as real experience. The little hands were groping for contact with the world, for stimulation, for life. Something within them was propelling these children to develop in mind and in body. But how to reach them? How to begin? To better understand how to help these children, Dr. Montessori enrolled in school again, this time to study philosophy, anthropology, and pedagogy. From 1900 to 1907, she studied and taught at the University of Rome, waiting for an opportunity to truly test her theories on children's development. That opportunity came in the form of a real estate venture in the San Lorenzo section of Rome. A company had gone into the neighborhood, a notorious place, and tried to improve the apartments and living conditions for families. The building managers realized that care was needed for the young children. Most mothers and family members were out working during the day, and there was concern that children would vandalize the newly renovated property. A sort of daycare situation was created, and Dr. Montessori was asked to oversee the care of the young children. The children who came to Maria's classroom were young, some only 2 years old, others ranging from 3 to 7 years old. It is interesting to note, however, that this aspect of mixed ages is still a hallmark of a Montessori classroom today. Maria recalled that first day. 60 tearful, frightened children, so shy that it was impossible to get them to speak. Dejected, uncared for, pale, undernourished, who had grown up in dark hovels without anything to stimulate their minds. The opening of the center took place on January 6, 1907. This day was significant for the fervently Catholic doctor. Traditionally, Catholics celebrate this day as when the 3 kings arrived in Bethlehem, bearing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh to offer to the Christ child. The fact that the school opened on a feast of Christ as a small child was not lost on Maria. She named the classroom area Casa dei Bambini, or Children's House. Maria did not work at the center full-time, since she still maintained her lecture schedule and other duties. She went twice a week to check and monitor the progress and needs of the children, and the daily care was put into the capable hands of a woman named Constanza, who was thought to be a portress or seamstress of the area. Little is known of her except that she followed Dr. Montessori's instructions carefully. One day, Constanza reported to Maria that when she put away the materials and toys at the end of the day, the children watched her carefully. She did not lock the cabinet, only to find upon her return that the children had taken out the materials and replaced them precisely back on the shelf as she had left it. The children were beginning to show Maria a characteristic that she would later explain as a strong sense of order. One of the first things Maria did was have child-sized furniture made. She creatively chose materials that would draw children's interest and activity. She prepared an environment for the children in this casa for their movement, for their needs, for their interests. This concept would eventually revolutionize education. The children began to demonstrate focus in a way that surprised Dr. Montessori. She observed a little girl using cylinder blocks. Even though Maria tried to distract the child in many ways, the child never looked up. The child repeated the activity more than 40 times before she spontaneously stopped. Maria concluded that a child does have the ability to concentrate and needs to repeat an activity. She noticed that when the child completed an activity with such intense concentration, they would be refreshed and happy afterwards, not tired. She understood the need of the child to repeat an activity, and that must come from deep within the person. Under her direction and care, the children began to change from the tearful, frightened group that they were at the beginning. The parents asked Dr. Montessori to teach their children how to read and write, an aspect that Maria had not necessarily planned on, but she attempted with the material that we now call the movable alphabet. Writing and then reading was like an explosion in the classroom. These children were transformed in positive ways. She saw their self-discipline and orderliness increase. She would later write, "Discipline is born when the child concentrates his attention on some object that attracts him, which provides him not only with useful exercise, but with a control of error. Thanks to these exercises, the child becomes calm, radiantly happy, busy, forgetful of himself, and in consequence indifferent to prizes or material rewards." Thus she realized that a child's development must be at the center of learning. The classroom, or environment as she called it, must contain tangible objects that engage the mind and the body and lead to movement with purpose. A little child cannot sit still and think without using their hands because a child's mind is active, it is growing. The child's body is filled with energy. The hands reach out to touch and feel the world, to sense it in every way. Maria realized that the objects must be constructive and purposeful. She continued to develop materials based on how children best interacted with them. For example, they could not be too big or too small. She constantly observed whether a child would work with them in a concentrated way and would remake the materials again and again. In this way, Maria was a true scientist and without the predetermined prejudices of her time. Word of her success went out and received favorable reviews. Soon a second school was opened that also brought about marvelous results. Many teachers sought to learn of her approach towards understanding the child as a whole person, to be guided according to their needs of orderliness, language, and movement with purpose. Dr. Montessori dedicated the rest of her life to researching children's development. She said, "It is not true that I invented what is called the Montessori Method. I have studied the child. I have taken what the child has given me and expressed it, and that is what is called the Montessori Method." In fact, her first book was titled Scientific Pedagogy, and although the title was accurate, it was cumbersome, and the name Montessori Method stuck, and that is how her approach to child development is known today.